Hi everyone, and welcome back to Real Tales. We will bring you the most insane cheating stories you ever heard. If you don't want to miss a video, I suggest you to hit that subscribe button and the bell next to it. Stay tuned for more. Nuclear ghosting revenge on cheating fiancé. This is my first ghosting story in my life, but here goes. The players are myself, fiancé's mom. The time frame is from 2013 to 2016. It has obviously been several years since the incident, and I literally have never told anyone in my new life about this. Tonight I have some good wine to drink and figure I'll let my fingers do the talking. I thought I had met the perfect woman. We met in the last year of college. We met at a party and hit it off instantly. She was a beautiful blonde with sun-kissed skin, and she could have been a model. She was kind, compassionate, sympathetic, good listener, and had an active life with many friends. She liked my friends, and it was awesome over the 3 years we knew each other and how our friend groups merged. Several of our friends began dating each other. It was some of the best times of my life. I was on for a post-grad in finance and she had a degree in contractual law. This is just to say we ended up being successful in our own rights. But I'm no slouch in the looks department either. 5'11", 190 pounds, and liked the gym. I wasn't a super athlete, but let's just say I was built. But I was. I'm very shy and didn't have a lot of prior relationships prior to meeting her. The first evening we met, we were smitten. First night we talked all night. Then it went to texting, phone calls daily, then dates weekly. Then after a year she moved in. I loved her family and her family loved me. It was a whirlwind romance. After 2.5 blissful years of overseas vacations, hiking trips and luxury vacations, I proposed to her. She said yes. I was over the moon. She was doing all the planning for the wedding. We were talking about our futures together, buying a house, children, and family trips that we were going to take together and all such things like that. Then it happened. One evening after we both get home to our apartment, she is a little distant. I think I noticed it right away, as we were always very affectionate towards each other. This would only happen about once a week for the first month, then it was more frequent. I would have been none the wiser, except that I used to listen to a lot of Reddit on YouTube. So, I waited and observed. These bouts of ignoring me would only last a couple of hours, then she would be right back to normal. But after 6 months she was like this almost every night. Things in bed were still great. Relationship with her parents still great. But over Thanksgiving at her parents' home in Louisville, Kentucky, she was standoffish towards me in front of her mother. Now her mother was a very observant woman. She pulled her daughter aside to talk to her, and I could hear them arguing. After some heated but muffled words, they returned to the rest of the family and carried on like nothing was going on. I figured I could ask her about it later and did. She was not willing to talk about it and asked me to wait till we were home to discuss it. I agreed, as I loved her deeply and thought we could work through anything. Her mother was an older version of her. Same stunning looks. This is important later. Back home I asked her about it, and she was unwilling to discuss it. When pressed on it for a week, she finally confessed that a guy at her work was trying to get to know her better. She wanted to be forthcoming, so she showed me her phone, and as I looked through it I noticed that all the texts that would have happened during the time she was withdrawing from me were removed. There was nothing untoward in the texts, but I did go into her phone settings and turned on her locator on her phone, as we shared the same phone plan. And I honestly thought it would make me see that she was not doing anything wrong. Was I wrong? That second weekend after Thanksgiving she had a company Christmas party. I had planned on going but came down with food poisoning and had to back out. She had a girlfriend pick her from our apartment, as they planned on drinking a lot and had a DD for the evening. We had planned on going out all night, so I told her to have a blast and I would see her in the morning. So, as I'm puking my guts out and barely able to get off the toilet for more than 30 minutes, I grabbed my phone and watched her location. First it was a restaurant, then the venue of the company party, then a bar. None of this alarmed me until I saw her phone stop in a downtown hotel. At this point I was miserable in more ways than 3. Projectile vomiting out my butt, mouth, and now soul. I finally fell asleep due to sheer exhaustion at 2 a.m. At 7 a.m. I awoke and saw she was still at the hotel. At noon she finally comes home, and I am on the mend. She loves me up, and I asked her about the previous night without mentioning anything about knowing her locations. She talks about the restaurant, party, the bar, but then says she went to her girlfriend's house to crash for the evening. First lie. For the next 3 months she has to start working later and later, 3 to 4 days a week. As I start asking her about it, she becomes more and more defensive. I talked to her mom one evening when fiancé didn't come home until late. I asked her mom about the Thanksgiving conversation, and she admitted to me that she thought her daughter might be stepping out of our relationship because of how she read her body language. She also said that her daughter was being more and more distant with her in their weekly texting conversations. With all this speculation that was going on in my mind, I kept it to myself. 2 weeks later at work I ended up getting a new project at my company that was going to require me to fly to the Midwest Monday through Friday for the next 5 weeks starting in 2 weeks. It came with an increase in salary, and as I broke the news to my fiancée, she was delighted for me. I didn't think though that she was excited for the same reasons I was. So, I went online and ordered 4 motion-activated spy cameras for my apartment. I put one in the living room, entry area, one in the kitchen, one in our bedroom, and one looking down our hallway. They were very small and connected to the internet via a hidden network so they couldn't be spotted on the Wi-Fi network. I secured the cams with a password and waited. On my first week out, she had girlfriends over the first 2 nights and never worked late once. The third night, a guy came over. I was enraged. I'm sitting there in my hotel room screaming at the monitor and calling her every name in the book. Then they went all the way, first on the couch, then in our bed. She bent for ways for him that I didn't know were possible. What was the worst was as I am watching them get it on, I call her to see how her day went. She hears her phone ringing and holds her hand up for him to stop giving her anal and answers the call. I ask why she is breathing heavy and said she was at the gym working out. As soon as the call is over, she goes right back to doing the dirty. When I got home Friday evening, I ignored her and went right to bed, and early I got up and went cycling. I was so upset that I didn't even realize that I biked over 50 miles from our apartment. The furthest I had biked before was 30 miles, but that day I went 105.6 miles. Getting back absolutely exhausted, I showered. Then she and I went out that evening and had fun with our friends and had a lot to drink. I was bursting inside. Heartbreak, anger, rage, feelings of betrayal all swirled around in my heart and mind. She, who used to be so attentive, was oblivious to all this. It hurt so much because I loved her so much. I finally confided in one of our mutual friends and he told me that they all knew about it for months. I was finally told. They all felt sorry for me, but no one again said a damn thing to me, which is why they stopped inviting us out with them. I hadn't noticed it before, but I could look back and see that about 3 months prior they gradually invited us. Me less and less. So, I figured I would try and win her back. The next weekend I planned the entire weekend as a complete weekend of spoiling her in every way. Wined and dined, pampering, massages, rubs, and talking to her about future plans and about how much I loved her. I knew I was starting to break through when after her 4th glass of wine she started to cry, and I could tell the guilt was coming up to the surface. I asked her what was wrong, but she would choke up every time she tried to speak. I then told her that if she did something in her past or was having some kind of conflict in her mind that she needed to speak to me about, that I was more than willing to talk with her about it, and if forgiveness was needed then I was more than willing to forgive and move on. The only words that came out of her mouth in her was how much she loved me. It actually hurt to hear that from her, as I now had 4 separate videos of her and the other guy in our apartment getting it on. Over the next 8 weeks of traveling to the Midwest, I recorded over 41 hours of her having a rapport in bed with what I found out was her coworker. She never worked late once while I was gone. I tried every weekend to be extra attentive, and each week she got more and more distant. After watching this for 8 weeks, I was done, so I devised a 12-step getaway plan. 1. Gather evidence. 2. Get her out of the way. In order to execute my plan, I scheduled a 2-week exclusive getaway trip for us at an all-inclusive resort, Barbados. She was ecstatic. Then a week before the trip, I claimed I had to back out and told her to take a friend. She scheduled coworker to go with her. 3. Terminate our apartment lease. 4. Find a job in another town. 5. Find a new place to live. When she is gone, perform the following. 6. Take her to the airport, go back home and pack all her things. 7. Get a new phone number, phone, email. Cancel all social media. Monday 8. Separate us completely in regard to finances. Withdrew all monies from our joint accounts and then closed them. I put all her money in an envelope and packed it in her things. Monday 9. Have the movers pack all my things up and ship it west. Monday 10. Take all her things to her mother's house 600 miles away. All my fiance's belongings fit into the back and bed of my F-250 crew cab. Tuesday through Saturday. 11. Give her mother the evidence. 12. Start my new life. I didn't want to do anything that was illegal, so I made sure that nothing of hers was missing. It was so hard to pack all her stuff nice and neatly away. I never cried so hard in my life. I have read so many times on Reddit about significant others saying they will never do it again when caught, but they don't stop. My hope was that she would genuinely confess so we could forgive and move on. She never did. Twice she came really close, but her secret was too hard for her to reveal. Tuesday morning, I left our apartment north of DC for the last time. It took 10 hours to get to her mom's house. What happened when I got there I was not prepared for. I arrived at her mom's house around 8 in the evening. I figured she would be surprised to see me since I was coming down unannounced. Since they lived in a gated community, I had to buzz her house from the front gate. So she was waiting for me outside when I drove up. I could tell that she had been crying when I walked up to see her. I asked her what was wrong and she hugged me, bawling that she thought her husband was cheating on her with a much younger, skinnier, and prettier woman. Dumbfounded, I just held her for what was probably 10 minutes. She soaked my right shoulder with her tears and snot. When she finally composed herself, I asked if we could go in and talk. We went in and I asked where her husband was and she indicated that he said he was going fishing with his buddies at a remote cabin an hour away. Then she said, he hates fishing. She gave me all the indications that she had picked up on, and apparently it had been going on for about a year. So, doing a little bit of research, we found a credit card hold charge for a 5-star hotel that was only 20 minutes away. On call later confirmed her husband was in fact there for a 4-night stay cheating with his mistress. 2 peas in a pod. I said, "What?" She responded, 2 peas in a pod. I said again, "Your husband is cheating on you and your daughter is cheating on me. That's why I came here to drop her stuff off and move to place name here." I showed her the evidence in a binder on screen captures I had made. After looking at the first 3 or 4 pages, she looked at me dumbfounded. We both hugged and cried for a good 30 minutes. At that point she said stop crying and looked at me and said, "Well, tonight there is nothing we can do about it except for you and I to knock out these 3 bottles of Moscato and duck in every room of the house." She grabbed 2 wine glasses and a bottle of Moscato wine and walked out to their private pool deck saying, "Are you coming out here or are you going to get ducking revenge?" Now I won't go into much detail because I don't want to get traumas, but that night and for the next 3 days we ducked non-stop. I put myself in every part her beautiful body could offer. I must have finished 25 and plus times in that period. After those days were over, we passionately said goodbye and I drove to my new destination. She kept me informed as to everything that happened when now ex-fiancé got back. The day fiancé got back was epic. I canceled my phone the morning of the day she got back. So when the plane landed and she called for a ride, it indicated the phone was disconnected. She apparently had her lover take her home. He dropped her off and left. When she came to the door, a strange couple answered the door and she freaked out. I can't tell you how many times she tried to call me because again the number was no longer valid. She went to her girlfriend's to stay for a time as coworker was already married. When she called her mom in a panic, her mom told her that I had come down and dropped off all her things and mentioned that all her monies were down there as well. Her mom didn't tell her that she had duked me more in 3 days than fiancé and I had in the last 6 months. But she did tell her that she knew that she was cheating on me, and I said I had found a new job, place to stay, and new career far away from her and all the friends we had, and that her mother was separating from her father due to infidelity. Apparently she cried for days and took a week off of work, but alas she found comfort in the arms of her married lover. Her mom never let her know where I was at. I had completely cut off that part of my life. The only link I had to that old life was fiancé's mom, and she has kept our secret to this day. Fiancé was ghosted the mosted. Too long didn't read. Fiancé cheated. Ghosted her life to start my own. Got with her mom, and we arrived at the second story of the day. What do you think about this last one? Was his revenge okay in your opinion? Second story. Ruined a marriage and my family for revenge. So I recently discovered this sub and had a personal story to share. I've always been the black sheep of the family. Cousins grew up to be doctors, professors, creatives, and whatever else. Meanwhile, I've managed to just make a humble, stable, passive income through some business decisions. Nothing fancy, but I can afford a 1-bedroom in Nick and live comfortably with that and a part-time job in a cafe. Everyone in the family, including my own parents, judged me harshly for not pushing myself to do what my cousins do. Especially my one cousin we will call Randy. Think the stereotypical dude bro who got rich thanks to working for his dad. Multiply that by 10, and you got Randy. Anyway, he always gave me the most shit, and eventually I just tuned them out cause I get to enjoy my life with my significant other. Work part-time and still afford what I want. So, to cut the bullshit short, Randy has a wife and 2 kids. He also had a mistress. I found this out cause one day when I was walking through the city when I saw him walking down the street with a woman who clearly wasn't his wife. Arms around each other. I checked Facebook and saw he had indeed posted about visiting a bagel shop in the city while on a business trip that morning, so we had indeed in the city. So, I decided duck it, let me see how this plays out. I followed them for 5 hours, snapped several photos, one of them going into a hotel together. I held onto these and waited until Christmas that year, about 6 months later. I decided to unceremoniously drop printed photos in front of everyone at the table before dinner and made sure to get his wife to see them. Cue screaming and fighting, I actually got a black eye out of it. It was Randy's dad who did it though, not him. Cue police, a lot of questioning, my significant other and I get kicked out. We head back home after talking to the cops one last time. The aftermath, besides Randy's wife and another cousin who hates Randy, my family cut me off entirely for several years. Whatever, even my parents had always expressed disappointment in me for not applying myself fully, so no real loss there. Randy got divorced, lost full custody of the kids after threatening his ex. Family occasionally tries to guilt me into apologizing, but my response is some variation of not gonna apologize for outing a cheating naughty girl, and I'm promptly blocked for another few months. Significant other and Randy's ex-wife are good friends and the kids call me uncle. Nice having a family who actually loves me unconditionally for once. Significant other and I got married, and that's when my family last tried to get into contact with me and were actually nice for once. Seeing me moving on I guess eats at them, I don't know. Maybe realizing their punching bag is gone for good. That's it really, living my best life now with a good family as opposed to a shit one. Second, a bunch of you all seem to think being abused is not traumatic or bad, as several comments seem to be saying wow you're a bad person for having a negative reaction to abuse and not handling it like a golden human being. So I'll clarify, the comments about my wasted potential weren't just oh your cousin's a doctor, what about you? They were I can't believe Randy just sealed a deal for X amount of dollars. Are you still working at that shitty cafe? Are you still saying what's her name? The girl with the pudgy stomach. Aren't you ever gonna do anything with your life? I'd feel so worthless living like that. Those are the nicer ones. The worst ones include being told that it's better I didn't try as I wouldn't amount to anything, and other such things along those lines, as I really don't care to remember the more toxic lines. I'm not interested in judgment. Go post on my The Butthole threads if you want to say your piece about that. But don't ducking tell me that I wasn't an abuse victim and wasn't treated horribly by my own family just cause I didn't spell out the nitty-gritty details. And now to the third story of the day. Cheat on my friend, I'll kick you out of high school. This story happened back when I was in high school, so I think it's safe to talk about now. One of my good friends and teammate had a girlfriend back during our junior year of high school. No one on our team really liked Liz. She was pretty self-centered and was always that obnoxious girl in class who always wanted to be the center of attention. She also was one of the more attractive girls in our class, and she knew it. Liz was the kind of girl who would do anything to be popular. And in this case, that meant getting in a relationship with our top wrestler. Football player. Stan, however, is a great guy. He was team captain, scholar athlete, took advanced courses in school. And I'm not even kidding when I say he was friends with everyone in that school. So coming into junior year, when most athletes go from the JV squad to varsity, it was no surprise that Liz started flirting with Stan more and hanging out around him in the halls during lunch and before school. Soon Stan and Liz got together and made it Facebook official. Of course, people were happy for them, but my teammates and I could tell, soon after they got together, that she was not a good match for Stan. She was very manipulative. She always invited herself to our team get-togethers, which mostly was 10 minutes 15 guys in a house watching Monday Night Football or playing videos games and going over our playbook. Anytime Stan would go out anywhere, Liz would try and force her way in somehow. And if Stan went out without her, she would constantly text him and make him feel bad for not inviting her, thus ruining his time, since he would spend most of his time on the phone with her, calming her down from her tantrums. However, after about 3 months of being together, one of our teammates found she made a profile on a dating app. We told Stan about it and he confronted Liz. Somehow she made a good enough excuse that Stan bought it and they stayed together. About 3 weeks after the incident, Stan caught her cheating on him with another guy from a different school. He saw them at a restaurant holding hands over the table. After he dropped the food off at home, he went to Liz's place to find her sitting on top of this guy, making out, and with the guy's hands on her chest he took a photo and left, holding back tears and feeling broken. They broke up that night, and since that was Stan's first real girlfriend, it really took a toll on him. His grades started slipping. At this point, he was in wrestling season, and he lost a lot of weight from stress and not eating. All his friends tried to cheer him up, but what made it worse was the fact that not even a week later, Liz was with some new guy. She also rubbed salt on his wounds by openly talking to our classmates, saying how great the new guy was in bed. My teammates and I were pissed. We were watching as our friend was getting more and more depressed each day, and how Liz kept screwing with Stan emotionally. This continued for about 5 or 6 weeks. That's when we had enough. It was time to kick her out of our school. Now, the state we lived in had just passed a law allowing the use of recreational marijuana for people over the age of 21, but shops weren't open yet. So I contacted my older brother, who had just graduated from college from a town notorious in the state for its pot culture. I told him the story and gave him some money to get some weed. Our plan was to stash the weed in her locker, then have one of our female friends anonymously leave a tip to the office saying Liz was smoking in the bathroom stalls. What I didn't expect was my friend wanting to pitch in and also leave in her locker a couple of his doctor-prescribed Adderall pills. So, we took the weed and pills, and one day after the last class let out, when she was by her locker putting her textbooks away, we distracted her and I tucked the goodie bag behind one of her bottom textbooks and shifted the top book against the back of the locker so you couldn't see it unless you pulled out the top textbook and looked in the bottom back corner of the locker. We did this during the day because our school had cameras in the hallways, and we thought it would look suspicious if someone who wasn't Liz opened up the locker. Our friend later after school called the office making the tip. Now, since the school knew that pot had just become legal, they had a zero-tolerance policy with drugs and alcohol. The following Monday before school started, we watched as the student resource officer came in with a K9 and proceeded to sniff out all the lockers in the school. They marked each locker that the K9 sat in front of and locked them so you couldn't open them, even if you took the padlock off. I think there was a total of 6 or 7 lockers marked, but it didn't matter to us. The weed that was in Liz's locker was so strong that you could smell it just by walking past it down the hall. Later we heard that during first period, the officer came into Liz's class and pulled her out. We're guessing she had to open the locker in front of him and let him search. Of course, he found the baggie, but what we later heard was that she even failed a drug test. She was charged with a juvenile felony because of the pills and weed and was expelled. She tried to blame Stan, saying that they shared a locker earlier in the year, but with his great track record in school and the fact that he offered to take a drug test, which he of course passed, they didn't believe it for a second. Liz went on to rant about the situation on Facebook, blaming the school for an invasion of privacy. Liz had to spend the rest of her high school classes at one of the district's remedial high schools. The following senior year, Stan went on to have one of his best years. He graduated with honors, got accepted into his dream college, and won Male Athlete of the Year. Meanwhile, Liz still showed up to our high school's away football and basketball games so she could hang out with her friends. But during the summer, right after graduation, Liz came out on social media saying she was 5 months pregnant. She must have gotten knocked up right before graduation. Stan has now graduated with his degree and was able to travel this last summer with his girlfriend around parts of Asia. Meanwhile, Liz is dealing with the struggle of being a single parent, working full-time as a receptionist for a clinic, and still living at home with her parents. Too long didn't read. Cheat on my friend, I'll plant weed and pills in your locker and get you expelled. Edit. Since most people believe the revenge was too severe, allow me to show you how I see it. We wanted to get her in trouble in order to make her leave the school, and it worked. But it only worked because she failed the drug test. She had to attend a remedial high school, which she graduated from, and had just as many, if not more, opportunities to attend college. When she turned 18 during that senior year, because it was a juvenile offense, it was dropped, so it was completely off her record. What's preventing her from going to college, I believe, is the fact that she got knocked up and needs to support a child now. Again, this isn't my fault. She had unprotected rapport and had a kid because of it. All I'm at fault for is making her switch schools and putting a juvenile record on her for maybe about 7 months. Thank you for listening, everyone. If you enjoyed the content, consider subscribing to our channel Real Tales, and leave a like if you hate cheaters. See you in the next video.